The king made a big address to the public yesterday. The anticipation was palpable. The world was on edge. No one knew what he would announce. For the past year, Charles has been fairly open about his cancer battle, which by all accounts appears to be legitimate, despite his refusal to disclose what type of cancer he has, much like Kate, except, unlike Kate, Charles was actually publicly seen going to his treatments. No being hustled through the back door for him. If you were gullible enough to believe that a woman who invites the press everywhere she goes would give up an opportunity to be snapped going to her cancer treatments and give up all that goodwill. But surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, whichever way you look at things, no one was more blindsided by his announcement than the heir and the future consort, the both of whom have spent the better part of the year openly planning his death. Never has a king of England been this disrespected since Edward II, who was undermined by his own court. His reign became a cautionary tale of a king surrounded by people already planning the next act, but Charles let it be known that he isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Overnight, rumors of his impending death were replaced with a national sigh of relief. And in his coup de grace, he stressed that not only is he doing well and far from death, but also that he will be increasing his engagements in the coming year. Make no mistake, this is a shot across the bow right at the heart of Kensington Palace. As the work-shy heir struggles to justify his intention to reduce his workload under the guise of modernizing the monarchy. All this year there were countless press releases describing William as the toughest ruler yet, outlining all the things he just can't wait to do once he becomes king. Not anything for the people, mind you. His plans resembled something more of a score sheet of all the grievances he plans to address, namely his brother. William continues to be perplexed by the easy natural charm and charisma of his brother, and along with his peons in the press, they continue to be thwarted by the Sussexes' stubborn refusal to falter. I mean, in which world, aside from the warped world of the UK press, would a woman who signed 2 major Netflix deals, launched a lifestyle brand that sells out the minute the products hit the shelves, who was the talk of the town at the Paris Fashion Week, in which world would that be considered a disastrous year? One of the most entertaining things about this drama has been the blatant gaslighting of the British press in their efforts to convince the public that up is down. Despite all their cheerleading, the Waleses continue to look more like a couple plucked out of the feudal times and transplanted to the present day. And speaking of feudalism, Forest Lodge continues to irk the public. Kate's 150-acre security buffer zone of choice land in Windsor Great Park seems to have stirred up something within the masses. According to this report from the Mirror, homeowners in the neighboring areas were aghast when one day in September, they woke up to the upsetting news that they could no longer access vast swaths of oak-studded open fields near the Wales' new home. They say that around 150 acres of previously publicly accessible land has been closed off to accommodate the couple and their 3 children, whose safety is of priority concern. The Home Office has also imposed a 2.3-mile personal exclusion area around the 8-bedroom property, and it's understood that anyone who is caught trespassing in the protected area will be arrested. Tina, who lives on the opposite side of Forest Lodge, says that the local dog walkers like herself have been left bereft over the new ban zone, which affects the Cranbourne Gate entrance to the park. The woman, who had walked that same route for 15 years, says that those who were initially more optimistic about Will and Kate's big move didn't realize that the park and Forest Lodge are actually not owned by the royal family. After it had been announced that William was moving there, I spoke to various people I bumped into, and we speculated about the closure of the fields and footpaths. And the general view was, I really hope not. But some were sanguine about it because they wrongly assumed that the royal family owned the park, she said. Unfortunately, their worst fears came true. Tina received an email from the Crown Estate to notify her of the controversial closure just 3 days before it was imposed. But before the announcement, there were worrying signs of what was to come, she said. There were months of works around Forest Lodge before the move. Big trenches were dug, so clearly a lot of infrastructure went in. They planted a new hedge and installed a new fence behind the back garden of the house, and then the new stock fence went up around the fields. Finally, the cameras appeared. Tina also warns that while the exclusion zone has been widely portrayed as only being the small 2-mile radius, the reality is that thousands of acres have been lost to the public. Thousands of people from miles around would have been affected. When I realized we had only a couple of days of access, I did go over there, and everyone I met was upset, she explains. I ran into a woman there that I recognized, and she said to me that when she got the email, she cried. For people who have walked there for years, it's so sad. Other upset locals have too shared their frustrations on social media. Cranbourne Gate is being closed at the end of the month. Now that bridleway is useless as it leads to a main road instead of into the park. I have ridden and hiked that route for 42 years. I also met a couple of people who had keys to the forest, which is the other side of Forest Lodge, Tina added, and they were desperately upset. It's like their back garden. The effect on them, of course, is absolutely massive. You've got a dog, and you've got hundreds of acres of woods that you've been allowed to use for years, and now you can't. But some are more empathetic towards William and Kate's security needs. Another resident said, "We love the Royals and William and Kate, and it's so exciting that they're moving to Forest Lodge. It's clear that this car park closure has not come from them, but it's down to security concerns. It follows William's vow to protect his family's privacy." Now listen to this. Following the death of his mother, Princess Diana. If you let that creep in, the damage it can do to your family life is something that I vowed never again to happen to my family, he said recently. However, it's not just walking routes that have been affected by the new security measures. A children's environmental educational center within the new exclusion zone has also closed down. And it's been reported that 2 families who lived in cottages nearby the Wales' new home have been evicted. The Mirror has approached Windsor Great Park for comment. Kensington Palace declined to comment. And a spokesperson for the Crown Estate said, "A security boundary has been introduced by the Home Office and Thames Valley Police in a small area of Windsor Great Park to support enhanced protective measures." Now wait a minute. Was it not Kate Middleton who just a few months ago was putting out videos telling everybody to get outside and enjoy the benefits of nature?
The Princess of Wales passionately embraces nature.
I find it a very spiritual and very intense emotional reconnection, I suppose, these environments.
In the short film, Princess Kate shares her personal thoughts and connection with the environment with a group of young scouts.
Not everyone has that same relationship, perhaps, with nature, but it is so, therefore, meaningful for me as a place to balance and find a sort of sense of peace and reconnection.
Nature for me, but not for thee. And who do the whales invoke to justify this land grab? William's mother, the late Princess Diana. You see, what happened was, he saw what happened to her, and he just wants as much protection as he can get, you know. This is the same man who had the nerve to accuse his brother of using their mother's name for publicity. And here he is, inventing some convoluted explanation, throwing his mother in for sympathy to explain why he is seizing land from the public. In other words, to justify blatant land theft. Because the royal family does not own Windsor Great Park. Graham Smith, chief executive of the anti-monarchy group Republic, told Newsweek William should not have been able to close those roads and close access to that land. It's not his to do with what he wants. So how was he able to get around this, you might ask? Well, just this year, the British government conveniently passed legislation via an amendment to the Serious Organized Crime and Police Act to make trespassing in a buffer zone around Forest Lodge a criminal offense. The act says that this was needed in anticipation of the relocation of a protected principal. This is understood to mean William as well as Kate and their 3 children. The amendment took effect quietly on September 29 of this year. Now, let me see if I can lay it all out clearly for you good folks. It is the job of the UK journalists to inform the public when land is about to be stolen from them. But instead, the guardians of the Fourth Estate are all engaged in petty squabbles and theater on behalf of the power-hungry heir and his wife. The people should be up in arms. Now, maybe it makes a little bit more sense why we constantly see headlines from the British press that has God knows what to do with anything related to news, including their abuse of the Sussexes. Because if you're too busy focused on that, you'll probably be blindsided by the eviction notice posted on your door the next day, informing you that you have literally days to scrape together your belongings from a place you've occupied for decades in order to enrich the real estate portfolio of the ruling family. And folks, I'm not even sure if Charles was on board with this. William seems to have taken to doing things by himself, without his father's consent for some time now. I mean, he's practically salivating over the impending news of the old man's death, which must have made the announcement yesterday all the more bitter for him and Kate. She's no innocent here, folks. Kate and Carol have been trying to wrench out whatever they can get from this arrangement from the very beginning. Carol, by the way, apparently has an entire wing for herself at Forest Lodge. I'm telling you, folks, this is Carol's court. £132 million a year from the sovereign grant, not including the land and money from the duchies of Lancaster and Cornwall, and now even more public land, all at the stroke of a pen. Now, do you even know which member of parliament is responsible for sticking into an existing parliamentary act this latest offense to the British public? Do you? Of course you don't. Because the British press is too busy camping beside the hospital bed of Thomas Markle to tell you what's really going on in your government. Anyway, his name is Dan Jarvis, Minister for Security at the Home Office. Here he is getting his MBE from Charles. Now, who else got an MBE? Oh yeah, this lady. And I'm going to talk about her again, folks. She comes up again later. The public has had enough. It's no wonder nobody turned up to see Kate for her much heralded annual Together at Christmas event, which we were told would be her big answer to Meghan's Christmas special. Folks, this is what the childish British press presents to you as information. Carrying water for two petulant teenagers trapped in the bodies of 40-something-year-old adults. For some nonsensical, one-sided rivalry with two people who have moved on. At the Together at Christmas event, the streets were empty. Gone are the days when Kate used to draw huge crowds. Notably absent was Pippa, who opted instead to go with her husband James to the Grand Prix in Abu Dhabi. Princesses Eugenie and Beatrice didn't turn up either, despite getting an invite from Kate. But then again, there's always been bad blood between the York sisters and the Middletons. Now, the press won't tell you this, but this was a big snub to Kate, because you would think that the York sisters would be happy to be in the fold after the disgrace of their parents. But oh no, even they decided to skip Kate's biggest event of the year. And it didn't help that both William and Kate tried every dirty tactic in the book to strong-arm them into convincing their father to abandon Royal Lodge. You just wait. I have a feeling another forever home might be in the works. Anyway, the press touted this as the biggest event of the year for Kate. From as far back as the summer, they began promoting this thing as Kate's big coup against Meghan's Christmas special. She didn't stand a chance. Despite inviting a bunch of A-list British celebrities, the event passed with a groaning silence. William looked as cheerful as ever. Through his usual clenched jaw, you could almost sense his haste to be done with the night and back to throwing back a pint at one of his various secret lairs. But back to Pippa. Word on the street is that the sisters are on the outs. You see, folks, Pippa no longer resembles the impressionable society-hungry girl who once orbited Kate as the future fiancé of the future king. That Pippa disappeared years ago. She was there during Operation Get William Back, a series of carefully staged outings after one of their many breakups, when it looked as though this time William might not return. The sisters paraded themselves around town, not as carefree young women ready to take on the world, but as part of a meticulously choreographed performance designed to recapture the wondering eye of a future king who was actively pursuing other aristocratic prospects. History could have been different had those prospects not roundly rejected him. Anyway, on Kate's biggest event of the year, Pippa was as far away from Kate as she could possibly be. Pippa never forgot what she did, how she sacrificed everything at the behest of her big sister, choosing loyalty to a crown that ultimately offered her nothing in return. Let's take a look back, shall we? Pippa wore a form-fitting Alexander McQueen gown as Kate's maid of honor at her 2011 wedding to William. And she stole the show. Indeed, the headlines the next day were all about Pippa's derriere. Soon, she was fielding offers from several major media outlets in the US, and she was even on the verge of landing a gig as a TV show host in America. We're talking major money here, folks. Then there was her lifestyle book. Pippa took an advance in the high six figures for a lifestyle book. That's right. Long before Meghan launched her product line and Netflix deal for a lifestyle show, Pippa tried her luck at the lifestyle niche. And she may well have succeeded had William and Kate not called her aside one day, urging her to give it all up for the sake of the crown. The excuse? Kate had been snapped on holiday with William on a yacht, where she appeared to be parading on deck, topless. The argument was that, by Pippa promoting her book, it would bring unwanted attention to the royal couple. Pippa acquiesced. Kate later successfully sued the French tabloid that printed these quote-unquote unauthorized images. That's if you believe that Kate had no idea she was being filmed, which I believe about as much as the Tooth Fairy. Kate knew she was being papped, just like she knew she was being papped earlier this year during her ski trip at Courchevel. Because despite the saintly image she portrays through the press, Kate loves attention. And she plays the press. And I have to admit, she plays them masterfully. She leveraged the scandal to guilt Pippa into retreating, urging her to abandon media opportunities, to downplay her book, to sacrifice for the crown, or for her. Pippa complied. She canceled promotional appearances, and the book died a slow, humiliating death in the bargain bins of bookstores across the country. The press dubbed it a failure. Now, would things have turned out differently with her sister's backing? We'll never know. What we do know is this: Pippa never forgave her. Then there was, of course, Pippa's strange behavior during Kate's mysterious absence, where she appeared on a beach at her father-in-law's resort, toned, tanned, and unbothered, seemingly oblivious to her sister's medical plight. Perhaps by then she had had enough self-sacrifice in service to her sister, and for what? To give up her dreams to become Kate's glorified maid? Pippa said no, and she's been saying no ever since. I think Pippa had a feeling that things may have been different for her had she been allowed to unfurl her true potential. And she'll have to live with that regret for the rest of her life. The two briefly reconciled last year at Wimbledon. If you recall, there was the embarrassing little episode where Kate awkwardly tried to introduce Pippa to Carlos Alcaraz, last year's winner, after the two shared an exchange where the small talk appeared to be so groaningly insipid that Carlos could not wait to extract himself from the conversation. Kate's unique posh brogue appears to have been the cause, because despite standing so close to her, he had to ask her to repeat what she had said. The look on his face said it all. The exchange bore all the hallmarks of strained exertion when one has to make small talk for the sake of performing. Like most people who find themselves in that situation, he made a hasty retreat. Kate was left awkwardly clutching to regain his attention, all to prove to Pippa once again that she was on top. But instead, she was left in the lurch, and the embarrassing result was on full display before the cameras. Pippa never went to Wimbledon with her again. The press, of course, tried to downplay it, but the press will always downplay Kate's embarrassing moments. Then there was the Big C announcement, and Pippa made no public statement in support of her sister. Only younger brother James released a statement of support to the press. Not surprisingly, he and his wife Alize were front and center at the Together at Christmas event. But James has always been after something too. After launching 2 failed businesses, the latest in which he was accused of selling Nazi-inspired memorabilia, James retreated into the shadows. Depression had overtaken his life, and he was not ashamed to admit it. And it's clear Carol's relentless social climbing and ruthless class engineering to claw her way to the top of Britain's social ladder had taken its toll. When you've been told that you must keep up only to fail, nothing wrong with failure, everyone has failed at something, it will take a toll on a person. And James took it to heart. So James will continue to ride his sister's coattails in the assurance that he will be the brother of the future queen, and whatever perks might be thrown his way as a result. In the same week, the royals hosted the first German state visit in 27 years, where William and Kate welcomed the German chancellor and his wife. Whether by accident or on purpose, Kate boldly turned up wearing Camilla's favorite color. Now, folks, I don't know if you understand what a tremendous slap in the face this was to Camilla. Camilla has always transmitted instructions that whenever she makes an appearance, no one must wear the same color as her, especially not her favorite color, royal blue. Now, folks, if you think this was an accident, I've got a bridge to sell you. Camilla's office would have briefed Kate on her choice of outfits in order to ensure that such a slight would not be committed. But it appears that Kate wanted to send a message herself. Perhaps she too had had enough of her mother-in-law's slights. Here she is, wearing royal blue, curtsying enthusiastically, perhaps as a giant F.U. to Camilla. Who knows? Camilla must have been furious. Not long after, this report emerged about the two women's poisonous relationship, painting Camilla as the villain, hell-bent against a reunion between father and son, and of course, painting Kate as the magnanimous peacemaker and power broker. Later, at the state banquet, Kate donned a tiara so massive one would have thought she was participating in an elaborate Renaissance fair cosplay. Hidden behind an enormous bouquet, Kate did not summon the same rapt, breathless enthusiasm she lavished on Trump just months earlier. Then again, she was seated beside a German, people not exactly renowned for their performative warmth. My apologies to any Germans listening. With the reports of a possible Sussex Christmas visit, Kate, master media manipulator, made sure to get out in front of the story, claiming to offer an olive branch to Meghan. Now again, if anyone believes that Kate is trying to broker anything peaceful with regard to any future Sussex reunion, I've got an even bigger bridge to sell you. If anything, Kate's primary motivation for wanting a reconciliation is Harry. Oh, how she longs to see Harry again. Kate doesn't care too much for reconciling with Meghan. The last time they occupied the same area, Kate appeared to be about to lunge at her like a feral cat. Surely, had Harry not stepped in and intervened, the headlines may very well have reported something closer to a battle royale. And folks, you know what these rumors of a Sussex visit tell me? It says, plainly, that William and Kate have been cut off from any information about Charles's plans. Remember Harry's surprise visit to see his father earlier this year, where William and Kate were left blindsided, that threw William into a fit of rage that continues to simmer to this day? It's obvious that Charles is well aware of where the main leak is coming from. Between the heir and the monarch, the trust is gone. For the second year in a row, the Waleses announced that they have no intention of joining the king and queen for the Christmas luncheon at Sandringham. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Charles decides to invite the Sussexes to signal to the heir that he is still just that, the heir. And how long he remains the heir? Well, according to this address yesterday, may well be a very long time. And so William and Kate are left in the dark. embroiled in a royal game of tit for tat with outfits and press leaks. They've long been cut off from the Sussexes, but now they're forced to figure out the monarch's next move. How humiliating. And finally, if you have any doubt at all that Kate is masterfully playing the press, look no further than her actions today. After Charles's optimistic report on the state of his health, where he stressed to the public the need to get screened for cancer, and where he thanked his doctors, Kate, according to reports, sent over some handwritten note to the Marsden Clinic. Yup, the same Marsden Clinic she will have everyone believe she was going to all of last year when nobody knew where she was, where they claimed she was being hustled in through the back door. Folks, if I keep going over that story, it's because it shows more than anything how much the British press has completely become the propaganda arm for certain members of this family. Now look, I know I have to preface this by stating that these are my opinions, but let me just leave you with this. The day this fraud is finally uncovered, the story will be so massive that Kate may very well disappear again. This time for good. Perhaps she'll simply retreat to a quiet life somewhere with her children, which is probably the best outcome for her. Because there's only so many lies and manipulation the public can stomach. And perhaps with the Wales's latest land grab, the schadenfreude of her exposure will be just what they need.